You know what? One of the most helpful things a person can do who has a trauma history is to reframe that experience of trauma, to reframe it mentally, to look at the way that you think about that trauma experience, what it did to you, what it was all for, and to reframe it. Your mindset matters when it comes to trauma. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in this video today so that you can possibly get a little better sense of hope for the future and you can reclaim some of that old traumatic experience into something positive. And actually, maybe in some ways, it made you stronger than you would have been otherwise. All right. I am Dr. Seth, psychologist. I've been a psychologist for over 20 years, and I have worked with many, many individuals over those years who have a history of trauma. And the trauma looks different across many different people. There are all different kinds of trauma that a person can have. They can have trauma inside their home, in their family. They can have a traumatic experience outside their home. They can have a trauma that includes some sort of a natural or environmental disaster. They can have trauma that was a single event, or maybe two or three times, or they can have had chronic trauma, chronic traumatic events, and one traumatic event that cascaded into others. All right. So there are all different types of trauma histories, but no matter what the trauma history, there is the chance for a person to reframe it. And in my clinical work, that is one of the things that I have found helps people as they deal with their experiences. So let's just go ahead and dive in. So, to start, I want to share some information on the one hand that may kind of confirm something that you have believed, and on the other hand, may also surprise you a little bit. I want to start by asking you who's watching a question. If you have had trauma in your past, all right, think about that trauma. Think about whether it was a one time thing or an ongoing thing. Think about whether it involved a person or maybe a group of people, all right? My question to you is, have you carried a negative identity because of that trauma with you for years? Have you let that experience make you feel bad about yourself or ashamed? If so, put a comment in the chat. Why? Because other people watching this, they may be helped to know if they feel the same way that they are not the only ones. There can be such a value, I think, in the comments sections of videos because it gives people a chance to share and tell their stories. It gives people a chance to share their own feedback, to share some of their own experience, and possibly to inspire somebody else. Maybe somebody else is struggling and somebody commenting can give them an idea about what worked for them, or also just sharing a feeling that they've dealt with maybe for many years and letting someone else know that they are not the only one, they are not alone. That is one of the biggest tragedies, I think, of trauma. Dealing with trauma, you often tell yourself that only you can understand that you're the only one. That's how intense the experience feels, even though it's not true. So remember, you can share your experience, whether it's in the comments section here or just out in the world and talking with friends or others who share some of their own life experiences. So, next, what I want to do is I want to talk about someone, a psychologist, a developmental psychologist I am grateful for, Emmy Werner. Emmy Werner was a psychologist who did a landmark study. You know, there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, I don't know, maybe millions of psychologists in the world, but only some psychologists manage to conceive of a psychological study that can be so helpful and important that it can be helpful to others for so many decades to come. And when I say that, I'm talking about Emmy Werner, the psychologist. And so what she did is she, a long time ago, took 698 individuals who were all born in the same year. in Hawaii on the island of Kauai. So Emmy Werner took these 698 individuals and she studied them. She followed them for 40 years, followed their stories, stayed in contact with them, continued to get information from them about how their life is going in many different ways. All right. This is what we call a longitudinal study, a long term study where you can compare the beginning data with data in the middle, how the people are doing in the middle, and the ending data, and say from beginning to end, these were the changes that we saw. All right, that's a longitudinal study. Well, what she found is that when she took these individuals, the whole group of individuals from birth, that those who had reproductive and environmental risk factors had problems later in life with delinquency, mental and physical health, and family stability, that the individuals had more problems in all those areas: stability, health problems, and delinquency. And you may ask yourself, what were examples of some of those environmental or reproductive risk factors? Well, one of the examples was premature birth. So, some of those individuals who had premature birth and as well family instability, they were found later to have more problems with delinquency, mental and physical health, and family stability themselves later in life. That makes sense. I share that all with you, like I said earlier, because that may confirm, if you have your own trauma history, what you have believed, that people who have much more difficult early experiences later will have more difficult life experiences as adults. Here's what the study found that was very surprising at the time: a third of those individuals who had all those risk factors actually did well in life. They showed resilience and they became caring, competent, and confident adults, even though they had these significant negative life experiences, a third of them. So, what that means, why do I share that with you? Really difficult life experiences as a young person do not necessarily mean that that individual will struggle and have some sort of difficult life later on as an adult. It doesn't mean that. Now, it does mean that for some, but it doesn't mean that for all. A third of those who were studied, a third who had all those difficult conditions, actually found a way to be resilient. Now, the reason that I want to talk about that today is because those individuals who were studied, those children, they were born in 1955, decades ago, many decades ago. And I can tell you that there were not mental health services and treatment available at that time in the 50s, 60s, 70s, even in the 80s when I was a little kid, for example. There were not those sorts of supports as widespread as they were today. Reporting laws around abuse and neglect were not in place like they were today. And you know what? We have teachers today. We have athletic coaches on kids' sports teams that care more than ever before, and also are often trained to detect signs of kids who are struggling, and then they report those and then link the child to treatment and services. We have services available, mental health services in schools. Why is all of that hopeful? Because it means we can catch these experiences earlier. What it means is, and the reason why so much funding has been put into mental health, is because there's an understanding that treatment helps, and treatment especially helps people who have dealt with trauma. Trauma does not have to feel like a life sentence just because you had it, that it has to form your identity, that it has to take over who you are, that it means because you had that experience in your past, that your future will forever be negatively colored by it. No, it does not have to be like that. It does not. I always say it's not over yet. That is the way that we need to look at our lives, at our future, at what's ahead. It is not over yet. just because a trauma history is a part of your past. Here is the ultimate point. You can reframe it in your mind, and you can say, I had that experience. I had those experiences, and let me share what I learned from it. So here is my call out to you watching. If you had a traumatic experience, share one thing that you learned from that, one thing that you learned from that that could possibly be positive. Did you learn, for example, then you're stronger? Turns out you're stronger than you thought. Did you learn maybe that it's not safe to trust people from the very beginning? What did you learn that's positive? Maybe you can say something that can be helpful in the chat to another person. But overall, you can reframe it. You are free to have the thoughts that you want, not the behavior that you want. We can't just engage in whatever behavior we want, but we can give ourselves permission to have thoughts, and we can have thoughts that are healthier and more empowering, that can shape the future, where we have a sense of control over our environment, that we don't have to be defined anymore by the past. You don't have to be defined by the past. Now, one of the healthiest ways that you can reframe that trauma experience into strength is you can say to yourself, I've learned in my life to invest in people who are good for me. I have learned in my life to invest in friendships, in others who are nurturing, who are nourishing to me, who support me, who are my cheerleaders. I have learned the importance of emotional safety. And the people, you can say to yourself, the people that I choose to surround myself with are people I feel emotionally safe with, in trusting they treat me well, they respect and accept my boundaries, they understand the word no when I say no. All of these things are empowering to you. And so you can shift this old experience of having lived through that trauma experience in your past and say, but I learned from it. But I learned from it. I am stronger from it. I am stronger because of it. I sure hope this video has been helpful. Check out some of my other videos on trauma or my other self-help videos that could possibly help you, and my hope, comfort you or give you some helpful tips in some way.